Razer's latest version of their long-running DeathAdder mouse, the V3, is an incredibly impressive bit of kit. The V3 is wired, unlike the very similar Pro model, which mostly just adds wireless support, but this also gets Razer's HyperPolling 8000Hz polling rate. Razer have also sweetened the deal with me here with their new Strider Chroma mouse mat. It's a mix of like a soft rollable mat with a relatively hard surface finish for, in theory, smoother gliding. It also squeezes RGB lighting around the perimeter, which is surprising to see in a rollable mat. So, the DeathAdder V3. Shape-wise, Razer has strayed from tradition with a new ergonomic form, raising the arch up for better palm support, moving the two side buttons up a little bit as well, and making more room for your ring finger on the right-hand side. This is definitely suited to longer and larger hands, as even my relatively large hands only just about fit still fairly comfortably on this. I found that palm gripping was the most comfortable for me, although you can claw grip it if you prefer, although you'd need extra large hands if you wanted to fingertip grip this. One thing that you might notice is the new smooth finish. Well, Razer will tell you that this will, make it easy to grip. Personally, I found that it's a little bar of soapy, a little slippery, and while I can't say that I had any actual problems while gaming, if I'm being as picky as I can be, I did notice that I had to put a little bit more pressure into clamping down on the sides while flicking around while gaming. That could very well be personal preference though, so I wouldn't be too bothered by that. You will be happy to know that you can apply as much force to this as you like, because despite this only weighing 59 grams, making it one of the lighter mice that I've tested, it's rock solid. Well, I mean, it doesn't sound rock solid, especially if you press the DPI button on the bottom. Have a listen. But it doesn't creak or crack when you push down on it. It feels rock solid. All the buttons are well supported. In fact, the side buttons actually have a pretty good tactile feel to them, and I think that they're in a pretty good position. They're out of the way enough that they're not going to be accidentally pressed, but they're near enough that they're still going to be easily pressed. The left and right clicks do feel pretty good as well. They don't feel too sensitive, but they don't have all that much in the way of pre-travel before the actuation point. Since these are Razer's optical switches, well, when you combine that with the 8000Hz polling rate that you will have to enable in Razer Synapse software, by the way, you get insanely fast click latency times, making for an incredibly responsive gaming experience. And speaking of gaming, this feels great. The distinct lack of weight here makes for a great and pretty fatigue-free time of flicking like mad. The SpeedFlex cable is incredibly light and really doesn't get in the way at all. Plus, the lack of a battery to charge or need replacing is actually kind of nice. The Focus Pro 30K sensor tracked incredibly well in my testing, feeling smooth and accurate for me. One of the more interesting features of that sensor is asymmetric liftoff distances. As in, you might lift it up by 1.2 millimeters before it stops tracking, and then it doesn't start tracking again until you're within 0.5 millimeters from the mat, for example. That's not something that I think that I've seen before, and it's a rather interesting option customizability, at least for those of us who are good enough to make use of it. One of which I am certainly not. It's also worth noting that if the 8000Hz polling rate isn't working for you, you can change that in Razer Synapse software. By default, it's actually set to 1000Hz, and you will need Synapse installed to be able to set it to 8000Hz, or a few options in between like 2000 or 4000. You can of course tweak things like DPI. You can have up to 5 DPI levels that you can cycle through with the DPI button on the bottom of the mouse, coupled with an RGB LED, which surprisingly is the only one on this mouse, to show which mode you're on. As for the Strider Chroma mouse mat, that's pretty nice too. The RGB effect is definitely best in the dark, can be a bit sort of patchy as you might be able to see on the camera on the front here, and by default works in pretty large segments for the wave pattern, so it's not exactly the most smooth. I did try tweaking it in Chroma Studio, but it was way more hassle than it was worth, so it's on basically what it came in the box as. The underside is rubber coated, so it really doesn't slip around, and the top side is this sort of fairly hard surface. Personally, I'm a bit more partial to a softer feel, but if you like them hard, this might be for you. The new DeathAdder design is bound to upset long-time users, but it's still plenty comfortable, easy enough to grip in the grand scheme of things, and feels pretty good in the hand. The build quality seems pretty top-notch despite the lightweight. The 8000 Hz polling rate is definitely a nice touch, as are the optical switches. The sensor tracks incredibly well and makes for an excellent gaming experience. At the current around £70 price tag, I think it's fairly hard to argue that this is not an impressive bit of kit, and it's worth considering if you're in the market for a lightweight wired mouse. Good job, Razer. Of course, those are my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the DeathAdder V3 and also the Strider Chroma mouse mat? Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you're interested in picking them up or checking out pricing when and where you watch this, I'll leave a global Amazon affiliate link in the description that you can check out. Otherwise, if you want to see more videos like this one, you can hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell notification icon, check out plenty of other videos on the end cards, including the Razer Kraken V3 headset I reviewed last week or the week before. If you haven't seen that, take a look. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, there are a load of links in the description. You can do so through YouTube, Patreon, pick up a hoodie or t-shirt like this one, or a load of other ones that I designed myself. If you're interested in testing things like monitors, you can buy one of my open source response time tools at osrtd.com. And otherwise, that's kind of it. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.